What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. All right, so yeah, we're back again with these live streams. Yeah, so even today we're trying out live streaming on all the different platforms. So we are live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook. For the first time, we're live on LinkedIn, and I think we're also live on Twitter. Not sure. So I see that people are slowly joining, but nonetheless, we will proceed. Okay, no, it doesn't look like we are live on LinkedIn yet. It looks like we're just live on Facebook and what's this place? YouTube. But nonetheless, we will continue. Let me see if I can get the people in on LinkedIn. Um, yeah, well, it is streaming, but it looks like people are not joining from there, but they're joining from our YouTube and our Facebook. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nkululeko Thusini. I'm a mechanical engineer by profession, and I've been registered as a professional with the Engineering Council of South Africa for over a decade now. I'm the founder of Palocraft, and if you don't know, Palocraft is the leading GCC Factories brand in South Africa, and yeah, so we sort of have that authoritative voice when it comes to GCC Factories. And today, what I wanted to talk about is to help you out to decide whether the GCC Factories is the right certification for you, or should you be considering other certifications. We don't know, but we're going to discuss that today. And I'm hoping that by the time that we finish, then you can make that decision. So for the people who are live, can I just get some thumbs ups? Can you hear my audio? Can you see my video? I see the on YouTube. Bapele, can you guys hear me? Is the audio fine? Sandy on LinkedIn. Oh, there you go. LinkedIn is live. Can you guys hear me? I'm hoping that you can hear me, because on my side everything looks fine. But please drop a comment. Should you what you call these issues with the sound or the video or what have you. So let's get started with today's agenda. So yeah, so as I said, today we wanna put this thing to bed, right? So you've heard about this GCC Factories. People, they tell you how much people earn when they get their GCC Factories. But is it really the right certification for you? And I ask this question because we interact a lot with people who are trying to pursue their GCC Factories, and the biggest thing that I note is that for people who are starting off or being introduced to GCC Factories, they don't know what GCC Factories is all about. They're not sure whether it's the right certification. Other people, you find that they're working in a construction sector, but they want to get GCC Factories, and that is the thing of not understanding the context of GCC Factories. And for the people who want to obtain the GCC Factories, who are in the right industry, have the right qualifications, then what they struggle with is to say, well, where do I start? So in today's live stream, I want to answer three main questions. So I'm going to answer, what is the GCC Factories? I'm going to help you decide whether the GCC Factories is the right certification for you, and I'm going to help you, provide you with the different steps into how do you obtain this GCC Factories. All right. So those are my three objectives. And when we talk about the what is GCC Factories, I want to look at the legal context there, and then on the factors that you need to consider when if you want to do the GCC Factories. I'm going to cover 5 of those factors, and then on the steps, I'm going to cover 5 steps that you need to take from today moving forward in order to ensure that you obtain this GCC Factories. Now, what is the GCC Factories? Right. So the GCC Factories, colleagues, is a license that is granted by the Department of Employment and Labor, and it's granted by the Chief Inspector at the Department of Employment and Labor. So The keyword there is license. So what is this license? What are you going to use this license for? So this license, you're going to use it for employers to be able to appoint you as a engineer in charge, or what is termed the GMR 2.1. So there's a lot of terminologies that I'm using here, and I'm going to explain all these terminologies by explaining the legal context of the GCC factories. But the other important thing before I get into that is that you need to know is that the GCC factories is not a qualification. So if there's any HR people in this live stream, GCC Factories is not a qualification. So stop asking it as a qualification. There's no NQF level linked to the GCC Factories. It's not registered as a qualification with the South African Qualifications Authority, and it's just merely an exam that what you call a license or a certification that you obtain so that you can be appointed as an engineer in charge for a factory. All right, so let's put that to rest. All right, so let's look at the context of the GCC factories. Where does this thing come from, and do I really need it? Where do I really need it? And to understand that, you need to look at where the law in South Africa starts. So our supreme law of the land in South Africa is the Constitution, right? So I'm hoping that colleagues, as I'm talking, you're writing somewhere down, all right? So the first thing that you're gonna write down on your notepad or piece of paper is all of this starts with the Constitution of South Africa. So, the Constitution of South Africa is the supreme law of the land, and it provides the legal existence of the Republic of South Africa. Now, in the Constitution of South Africa, there is a section where it talks about the Bill of Rights. And in the Bill of Rights, there's a number of these Bill of Rights. And the one that I want to zoom into right now is the Bill of Rights that states that everyone has the right to an environment that is not harmful, and the what you call everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health and their well-being. All right, so that comes directly from the what you call from the Constitution of South Africa. So what does harmful mean? So what does it mean for you to have a right to an environment that is not harmful to your well-being? So if you read that statement alone, it can be open to interpretation, or different people can interpret the same thing differently. So this is what we call then a residual risk, right? So residual risk just means that after you've made the law, there is still room in which this law can be misinterpreted. So, for example, if you were to change a light bulb at your household, right? So, at home, if you change a light bulb, you stand on top of a chair, you stand on top of the table, no problems, no one's gonna frown upon you. You change the light bulb, and the job is done. But you go to your workplace, and in your workplace, you want to change a light bulb, and the minute you stand on top of the table, and then the problems start. So, firstly, when you stand on top of the table and you fall and you get injured, then you got hurt at work, which is now a legal risk for the employer. Then the second thing is, if from an employer point of view, the question is, well, have you been trained to change a light bulb? Because if anything goes wrong, then there's harm to your safety and your well-being. So you can see that in the two different environments, we could be doing the same thing, but the interpretation of what is harmful differs. Now, because the interpretation differs on what an environment that is not harmful to your well-being differs on different contexts, then we've got then legislation that covers like how your well-being is protected as a human being. Now, the legislation, if you look at it, then there's different departments that are then formed that will develop this legislation. So, for example, if you are working in a workplace, then the legislation that is there to ensure that your well-being and safety is ensured, then that is the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So then if you're working in the mine, then it will be the Mine Health and Safety Act. Then if you are in a community, then you've got the what you call the Police Act, where then you've got then the police who are there to protect you and ensure that you are in an environment that is safe, right? So you can see that in different departments and different legislation, it speaks to this one point or this one Bill of Rights, which says that you have the right to an environment that is not harmful to your well-being and your health. All right. So now let's double click and zoom into workplaces. So in workplaces, you've got what is called the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Then in the Occupational Health and Safety Act is there to provide for the health and safety of persons at work and for the health and safety of persons in connection with the use of plant and machinery, right? So that's the purpose of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So there's two things there that are mentioned, right? So the first one is to ensure the health and safety of persons at work, and the second one is to ensure the health and safety of person in connection with the use of plant and machinery. All right. So that's the general requirement or the reason why we've got the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Then in the act itself, if you start zooming in there, there's section 8 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Now, Section 8 of the Act is the general duties of employers to their employees. So 8.1 says that the employer needs to provide a safe working environment for their employees, right? So what does having a safe working environment mean? Then Section 8.2 of the OHS Act tries to break that down even further, right? So provide systems of work, identify hazards, evaluate risks, provide training, provide supervision when using machinery, right? So then from Section 8.2 of the OHS Act, there's Section 43, which basically zooms in even further. And Section 43 gives the Minister of Employment and Labor to promulgate regulations. Now, these regulations are there to ensure that the different provisions of the Act are complied with. So, the one provision that we are talking about right now is safe use of machinery and supervision of machinery. Now, Section 43 then gives the minister the right to promulgate regulations, and one of these regulations is the general machinery regulations. Right. So you can see that we moved from the Constitution of South Africa to the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Then from the Bill of Rights, we moved into the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Then in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, we talk about Section 8.1, which is the general duties of the employer to the employees. And then 8.2, the specific duties that the employer needs to ensure that they comply with. Then in the OHS Act, we zoom in further and then we go to Section 43 of the OHS Act, which talks about the regulations, and we're saying that there are regulations that are promulgated by the minister at the Department of Employment and Labor, and one of those regulations is the General Machinery Regulation. And the General Machinery Regulation was promulgated in order to ensure that the department provides the guidelines on what employers need to do in order to ensure that there's supervision of machinery when used by the employees, and also to ensure that the machinery that is used at workplaces, does not cause harm to the employees and any other person who may be exposed to that machinery. All right, so we've drawn the picture. We are in the general machinery regulations now. Now, in this general machinery regulation, there's regulation 2.1. And regulation 2.1 simply states that employer, you need to ensure that you appoint a competent person who will provide supervision of machinery. All right. So there's two words that I've mentioned there. So it's competent person and providing supervision. So in the competent person, then it goes on. The regulation goes on. If you go to GMR 2.4, then says that, well, the competency of this GMR 2.1 will depend on the size of the facility. All right. So if the facility, the sum of the power generated by machinery in that workplace or in that premises or that facilities is above 3,000 kilowatts, then the competency requirement for that appointee, this competent person, this engineer in charge, that person needs to have a GCC factories. All right, or it must be a certificated engineer. And for you to be a certificated engineer, you need to have what? The GCC factories. All right. Then the other option is that you need to have a bachelor's in mechanical or electrical engineering, and you must have passed the GCC Factories OHS Act exam and have a minimum of 2 years experience. All right. So that is the condition for you to be appointed as the engineer in charge for a workplace where the sum of the power generated by machinery is above 3,000 kilowatts. All right. This is the reason why you need to obtain the GCC factories. All right. So if you have in your career plan is that you want to be one day be appointed as the engineer in charge for a premises or a GMR 2.1 appointment in a workplace or premises or whatever, then you need to have your GCC factories, right? And remember that the GCC factories is also required where if in the workplace the machinery is used for the distribution of electricity and the maximum demand is above 10,000 kVA. All right. So even in that context, there needs to be a legal appointment that is called a GMR 2.1. All right. So that's the first part, the competency. So the second part is supervision. What does supervision mean? Right. So if we look, for example, the recent incident I think it was in George, where there's the collapse of the building, right? Now, in that context, the regulation there was the construction regulation, and the legal appointment in that incident was a construction manager, which is a construction regulation 8.1 legal appointment, right? Now, when an incident like that happens, where people die, people get hurt, the first person that needs to answer is the legal appointee, right? So, because the legal appointee provides supervision in such a way that any decision that is made that can influence the health and safety of people needs to be approved by them. Now, taking that same example, bringing it back into the context where you've got machinery. So, colleagues, machinery just means that you've got pumps, motors, conveyor belts. What you call all these different machinery, industrial machineries operating in a process to produce some sort of a product or some sort or contribute to some sort of a process, right? So that is machinery, all right? So if you've got those machinery in your workplace, there needs to be a competent person who is appointed to make the decisions in relation to the operations, the maintenance, the installation, all the different decisions for that workplace to ensure that people don't get hurt, right? So if your career plan is that, or your career path is such that you want to one day be appointed as this GMR 2.1 or this legal appointee in a factory, then the GCC factories is something that you may consider. But it doesn't end there, right? So what I've just explained is just the industry part and the job function part. So when I talk about in the next segment, where I'm going to be talking about the 5 factors that you need to consider in order for you to take up this path of obtaining the GCC factories, then I'm going to unpack that even further, right? But the point that I'm trying to make at this point of the live stream is that we've got the Constitution, and then from the Constitution, we've got the Bill of Rights, and one of the Bill of Rights is that you've got the right for your health and well-being to be protected. And how it is protected, it depends on the context. Then in the context of workplaces, then we've got the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which describes or provides the provisions that that are required for your health and safety to be protected. And then in the OHS Act, then we've got Section 8, which is the general duties of the employer. And then to help the employer, we've got Section 43, which is the regulations. And in one of the regulations is the General Machinery Regulation, which requires a competent person to be appointed. And this competent person is what we refer to as a GMR 2.1 appointee, right? So this is a designate person who provides supervision, and they must be competent. And basically, the competency depends on the size of the facility. And what we are focusing on now is where the sum of the power generated by machinery is above 3,000 kilowatts. And when it's above 3,000 kilowatts, or where you're using the machinery for distribution of electricity, then where the maximum demand is above 10,000 kVA, then you must have your GCC factories, or the competent person that is appointed as the engineer in charge must have the GCC factories, right? So that's the long and short of the legal context of this GCC factories. Now, let's go in and let's zoom in to say, okay, cool. We understand the legal context, right? So in understanding the legal context, if you are watching this stream right now and you work in the mines, log off. GCC factories is not for you. So when we talk about GCC mines, then we will consider you. So you work in the mines, log off. It's not for you. You work in construction, log off. It's not for you, because in construction, what you need to be looking at is the construction manager, right? Because in construction manager, the legal appointee there is going to be the 8.1, right? So your career path is different. So log off, go into that career path. In the mines, the legal appointee there for engineer in charge is the 213.1. So if you're in the mines, log off. We'll talk about the mines at some other time, not today, right? If you're working in design, like you were working in consulting engineering, you are working in a design office or whatever, log off. This is not for you. What you need to be considering if you are in the consulting engineering space, it's more focusing on getting your PRN or your PR technologist, because the context, in that context, the legal document or certification that you require is that EXA registration and not the GCC factories. So if you're in that space, log off and then consider that route, right? Because if you are not in the right type of workplaces, then you're going to find it very frustrating to obtain this GCC factories, and it's going to be so frustrating that you will think that it's deliberately being made impossible for you to obtain it. All right. So with that said, let us now look at the 5 factors that you need to consider before you decide that you want to obtain these GCC factories. And the 5 factors are basically your qualification, the experience that you have, the industry that you're in, the job functions that you are doing, as well as your age. All right. So the last one is the most controversial one because I always get a lot of pushback when I talk about the age part. But yeah, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it when we talk about age. I'm just going to be very honest with you so that you don't waste your time and then you focus your career on the right path and the path of least resistance for you, depending on where you are in your career. Right. So let's talk about qualification. So the first one is the qualification. The GCC factories, colleagues, is it's geared for persons who have a mechanical or electrical engineering qualification. All right. So if you are a bachelor's in civil engineering, log off. This is not for you. If you've done I don't know, like a BA in whatever, Bachelor of Arts in whatever, log off. This is not for you. If you've got a BCom, log off. This is not for you. All right. For my colleagues with what you call industrial engineering, stick around, because there might be a way in which you can maneuver to get the GCC factories if you've got your like an industrial engineering qualification, or you've got a chemical engineering qualification. So there is a way, but I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Right. So let's look at the mechanical or electrical engineering qualification. So there's three main routes then in terms of the qualifications. Right. So there's the bachelor's in mechanical or electrical engineering. So this is the bachelor in engineering, or BSc in mechanical or electrical engineering. So that one is the easy one. So if you've done that, then yeah, so you're good to go. So if you've got maybe the like aeronautical engineering, but you are working in the right industry, then there is also a possibility. So that will count as other qualifications. But the main qualifications, mechanical or electrical engineering, bachelor's, that's route one. Then route number two is the National Diploma in Mechanical Engineering. So in the what you call the National Diploma in mechanical or electrical engineering, a number of colleagues there, they end up getting like their BTech or their advanced diploma, or their honors, in that stream. So it doesn't matter whether it's national diploma, it's BTech, or it's advanced diploma, or it's BEng Tech, the new one. What is it, BEng Tech? So all of those qualifications in mechanical or electrical engineering, all of them fall under route two. Okay, so route two, you need then those qualifications. Okay, and then route three is the national N diploma. Right, so if you've got your N6 in mechanical or electrical engineering, then the GCC factories may be for you. All right, but if you've got your national N diploma N6, then you still need to have the relevant trade, right? So there's about 20 something trades, but most of the trades, colleagues, it's like the trades that are mechanical, electrical. So electrician, millwright, boiler maker, fitter, welder. So those type of trades, you may be eligible to obtain the GCC factories. All right. So this is the first factor. Remember, there's 5 factors that I'm talking about here. So the first factor is the qualification. All right. Then from the qualification, then on route one, there's no issues with your degree. You submit your qualification, sorted. Then for route two, there is a bit of a trick to that one, because your qualification needs to have the plant engineering modules as defined by the Department of Employment and Labor. So what are these plant engineering modules? So there is a whole list that the Department of Labor provides, and then of the different topics that your qualification needs to cover. All right. So this is where it gets a bit tricky. So in order for you to identify if your qualification meets those requirements, you just need to submit your application to the Department of Employment and Labor, and they will evaluate your qualification and they will provide a response. All right. However, next week, is it Monday or Tuesday? Next week, we do have another free training that you can join next week, where we're going to look at how this qualification evaluation is done. And yeah, so then we're going to go step by step, and then even do some examples given the audience that we're going to be with. So at the end of this, I will share the link to that event. Then you can RSVP to that event and then join that session where we're going to be going through the subject evaluation. And we're going to do the same for the colleagues who have a national and diploma. And 6, you also need to have the minimum subjects, and your qualification needs to meet the minimum topics from the plant engineering syllabus. So next week, we're going to have a session where we we go in and we do it step by step. But the long and short of it is there is no approved institution that that is approved by the Department of Employment and Labor to do your qualification evaluation. You're supposed to submit directly to the Department of Employment and Labor, and they will do the evaluation. What we're going to be doing next week is I will help you and show you how to do a self-evaluation, so that maybe whilst you're waiting for the official response from labor, then you could start doing some of those modules that we do identify. Right. So that's route 1, 2, and 3 in terms of qualifications. Okay. So now in terms of the other. Okay. So there's 2 other factors when it comes to qualifications. So there's foreign qualifications. So if you did your mechanical or electrical engineering qualification in another country, you may still be eligible. So if you've got a foreign qualification, all you need to do is to do the qualification evaluation with SAQA, which is the South African Qualifications Authority. So that one, you can just Google SAQA qualification evaluation. It will take you directly to that page. It's an online application, you submit, and then I don't know how long they take to respond, but they do respond, and they say your qualification is equivalent to this qualification in South Africa. Then you're going to take that and then use that as your submission to the Department of Employment and Labor. So if after the evaluation by SAQA, your qualification will fall under one of the 3 routes. If it falls under the bachelor's in mechanical or electrical, then you will follow that route 1, which basically I've never seen anyone with a mechanical or electrical bachelor's degree having issues with the modules, because the degree itself covers everything. All right. So if it falls under route 1, then you sort it. Then if it falls under route 2, which is now the national diploma, then that may go through additional evaluation, and you may need to do additional subjects. But that discussion is not for today, colleagues. Let's talk about this subjects next week, all right? Because there's not going to be enough time to cover all of that right now. And then, and then it can also fall under route 3. Then the other option when it comes to qualification is the other qualifications. So in industry, for instance, you could have a chemical engineering qualification and end up working in maintenance and operation, where you are actually you're appointed as what you call the support engineer, or whatever the case may be, but you're making decisions and that are related to mechanical and electrical infrastructure. And from those decisions, then you are exposed to this role of the GMR 2.1. Right. So if you've got like a chemical engineering, so mostly like guys or girls with chemical engineering, with industrial, we've got like an industrial engineering qualification. What other one? You've got I'm forgetting the other ones, but there's these other bachelor's degrees or national diplomas that are sort of like specializations within the broader engineering. So then if you are in that space, then yes. If you have a civil engineering qualification, please log off. This is not for you. Go and consider something else. If you've got biochemistry and all of that, please log off. This is not for you. Consider another career path, because if you're going to try to go with this career path, it's going to take you quite a while, and you basically need to get a new qualification. So unless if you're saying, well, you want to change your qualification and get a mechanical or electrical engineering qualification, then maybe you can carry on with us. But yeah, so civil engineers by structural engineers by so all these other engineerings that have nothing to do with maintenance and operation in industry, please so this is not for you. Right, cool. So that's factor number 1, which is qualification, right? So factor number 2 is your experience. So the experience to be considered to actually what to call to write the GCC Factories exams is okay. So there's route 1, 2, and 3, right? So let's start with route 1. So for route 1, you just need a minimum of 2 years experience in maintenance and operation of machinery. We want to talk about the industry because industry is factor number 3, right? So the important thing right now is the experience needs to be in maintenance and operation of machinery. So what does maintenance and operation of machinery means? So it means that you are looking at the check side. So this is safety, health, environment, and quality side of maintenance and operations. You're looking at the engineering side. So this is the sizing of the equipment, the what you call like doing modifications on the equipment, doing fault finding on the equipment. Then the last one then is like the management side. So on the management side, you are basically doing the installation, the decommissioning, the planning. So basically, you are doing production planning, maintenance planning. So you are drafting maintenance procedures, operations procedures. You are when there's a safety incident, you are doing root cause analysis. When there's an engineering incident, you are doing root cause analysis on that. You are investigating fault finding. So if you're doing all of those type of activities within maintenance and operation environment, then your experience is sort of in line with the GCC factories. And the easiest way to also determine what experience are they referring to is to just look at the role of the GMR 2.1. So remember when we started, we spoke about the context of the GCC factories. And in this context of the GCC factories, what we said is that the reason why you want to obtain the GCC factories is because you want to be appointed as a GMR 2.1 for for a facility that needs to comply with the OHS Act and needs to comply with the general machinery regulations. All right. So you're at the end, you are appointed as a GMR 2.1 and you're going to be fulfilling the role of the GMR 2.1. So what the Department of Labor is trying to evaluate from you is to say, have you been exposed to the activities that you are going to be doing as a GMR 2.1 appointee? And those activities are SHEC, which is safety, health, environment, quality. It's engineering, and it's management, right? So those are the 3 main things that we are looking at, right? Then the other consideration when it comes to experience is the number of years, right? So route 1 is 2 years experience. Route 2, it's 2 years experience with a minimum of 1 year in a factory. And then route 3, it's 3 to 4 years experience and with a minimum of 1 year in a factory. So remember that in route 3, you've got people with different trades, right? So you've got electricians, you've got welders, you've got fitters, millwright, and so forth, right? So if you are a electrician, for example, then you require a minimum of, I think it's 4 years experience. But at the end, I will share the link where it, what you call the minimum experiences for the different trades is required. Then you can go through that. So I'll share the link as soon as I finish talking. All right. So we'll share the link for the trades and the experience required. So if you're an electrician, you will have to have a minimum of 4 years post your trade. All right. So once you've got your trade as an electrician, then you've got the 4 years that you need to work in order to meet that requirement. All right. So if you look at route 2 as well, so remember in route 2, before you to get your national diploma, you need to do your P1, P2, or your in-service. That in-service does not count as experience. So the experience that they count is the post-qualification experience. So when you obtained your qualification or met the requirements of your qualification, then that's when the clock sort of starts. Okay, so that is the experience part. Now let's look at industry. So the industry, I've already sort of touched on this. So number one, the employer is required to comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So that's where it starts with the industry. So wherever you are, you need to look at what act am I what act is my workplace governed by, right? So if OHS Act is one of those, then we've met the first criteria, right? So if you're working in the mines, as I said, please log off. This is not for you, right? Because the Mine Health and Safety Act is a different route. If you are in construction, well, construction, yes, it's still under its OHS Act, but then under a different regulation, which is the construction regulations. So log off. If you are in the OHS Act and your employer needs to comply with the general machinery regulations, then you need to then listen even more, right? So you've got the right qualification, tick. You are working in maintenance and operation, and I've explained what that means, tick. And you are working for the right employer in the right industry and the right employer. So this is OHS Act, General Machinery Regulations. Now, how do you know if your employer has to comply with the General Machinery Regulation? If you've got a motor, a pump, fans, conveyor belts, all of those in your workplace, those are machinery. And since you've got those machineries, then the General Machinery Regulations kicks in, right? But remember that a GMR 2.1 appointee, there are some exclusions, right? So, for example, if you look at malls, they've got like this huge HVAC systems. Yes, those are machineries, but they don't need to appoint a GMR 2.1 for those because those are excluded. So, HVAC systems, like for malls, buildings, elevators, escalators. What else is excluded? If you know what you call, you've got just small power and lighting and all of that. So all of those is excluded. Okay, so this here we are talking about now. There's in industry there's a process, like for example your ESCOM, right? You are taking coal, burning coal, putting water, producing steam. So those type of industries, that's where you need a 2.1 appointee. Your Tonga Toilets, your Unilever, like your the whole FMCG space, basically, you need a 2.1 appointee there. All right. You've got the manufacturing space, like if you've got with the what you call on the manufacturing side, you've got your John Thompson boilers, your Actom, those type of spaces, they need a 2.1 appointee, right? So those spaces, that's the sort of industry that we are talking about. And for the GCC factories, then you need the sum of the power generated by the machinery in that workplace to be above 3,000 kilowatts. Then you must have this GCC factories. All right. So being in the right industry, very, very important as well, because in the right industry, you are able to be exposed to the right type of work. All right. So that's number 3. Now, number 4 is the job function. All right. So job function, I've already said, check engineering management, right? So if you are working for ESCOM, but you are in the I don't know, cleaning department, then it's not going to count, right? Or you are in ESCOM, but you are working in procurement, it's not going to count because you are not what you call doing the job function that is required, which is the check engineering and management, right? So who are we looking at here? So if you are working as a maintenance technician, so you're in the right place, right? Your maintenance artisan, your maintenance engineer, plant engineer, you are a maintenance manager. So those type of roles, they're aligned with the sort of job function that the Department of Labor is looking for, right? So your job function is very, very, very important. Okay, so if you are in the planning department, you are touching very little of the full scope of what is required, right? So remember what I said. When you think of job function, always think about what will the GMR 2.1 will be doing, all right? Now, if we are not doing those mini tasks of a GMR 2.1, then you're not doing the right type of work. And when you submit your application, there's a chance that it will be rejected, right? So I'm going to repeat on the check side, which is safety, health, environment, and quality. You are developing quality control plans. You are doing risk assessments. You are doing hazard identification. You are doing incident investigation. You are drafting procedures, safe work procedures. So if you're doing all of those type of things, on the check side, tick. On the engineering side, you are sizing equipment. You are doing fault finding when there's failures or there's incidents. You are part of the safety incident investigations. You are updating data sheets. You are producing technical specifications. So if you're doing those type of work from an engineering point of view, tick, you are doing the right job function. And then lastly is the management. So in the management, you are doing project management plans, maintenance management plans. You are, informing the maintenance strategy to determine when are you going to do preventative maintenance, when are you going to do reactive maintenance. So if you're doing those type of activities, then you are covering that what you call that job role or job function that will help you be accepted for GCC factories. All right, so tick, you've got the management part. Now let's go to the last one, the very controversial one, which is the age. So let's start with the minimum age. So the Department of Employment and Labor is not going to accept you as a candidate if you are, or basically you cannot be given the GCC factories if you are less than 23 years of age. All right. So when you do your application, you must be above 23 years of age. So that's the minimum qualification. It's the law. There's nothing I can do about that. All right. Then let's look at the maximum age side of things. Now, if you are 40 years old, you don't have a mechanical or electrical engineering qualification, you don't have the experience in the right industry and the right job function, you are not you don't have the experience in the right industry and the right job function, please log off and go focus on something else, right? Because the thing is with this here now is, from a brother to a brother to a brother to a sister, right? You are going to struggle to secure a GMR 2.1 if you get your GCC factories way late in your career, number one, and number two, if in between the 20 years and 40 years you haven't been in like a function where you are leading teams and you are leading safety, ensuring engineering compliance and all of that. If you are not doing that, you are over 40, please consider something else. Look at where you are and then try to navigate your career. Let me give you an example. All right, so there's a what you call a colleague who is an electrician. He's got the trade test in electrical. He's been what you call he's got the N6 in electrical engineering, but for the past 20 years, he's been working as an electrician in the construction and built environment space. All right. So he's coming in, he's 40, 45-year old, right? And he wants to do HACC factories. So number one, you don't have the relevant experience within the context of the GCC factories. Number two, the what you call the age gap there. If I were to look at someone who was in the industry, the employers will tend to favor that person over you, even if you manage to get the minimum 4 years experience and then you get your GCC factories, you're going to struggle to get that GMR 2.1 position. And this is just purely from industry experience. And yes, I am discouraging you. And yes, I'm saying look at something else. So what I advised that specific person was to say, well, look, you're in the construction side. Why don't you go the design route? Because you already know the installation, you know the legal requirements for electrical installation in built environment. So there is a design side of that, right? And that design side all you need to do is then get your professional registration with EXA and then look at the design route, because it's going to be easier for you to access that career path and grow in that career path. Whereas this other career path of GCC Factories is going to frustrate you, and you are going to resent it, and you're going to feel like the world is against you, but it's not against you. It's just the timing. All right. So, colleagues, those are the 5 considerations. I know the last one is a bit controversial. We can debate it all day, all night, but it is what it is. Then, if we look at then the 5 steps, the next part is the steps to obtaining your GCC Factories. So with everything that I've discussed so far, basically I've covered a lot of the steps. So step number 1, meet the requirements. So we've spoken about meeting the requirements, and the requirements have to do with your qualification and your experience, right? So those are the requirements. And then one of the big requirements there is this qualification evaluation. And I'm saying to you, join me next week, and we will be doing a qualification evaluation workshop. And then in that workshop, then you will see how to do a self-evaluation. But the long and short of it, submit your application to the Department of Employment and Labor, and they do their own qualification evaluation. There is no other institution that is approved to do that. So you need to submit your formal application with the Department of Employment and Labor. Number 2, you need to submit your application, right? So with the submission of the application, next week, join our other workshop where we are going to be completing the application documents that you need to submit to the Department of Labor. So in that workshop, we're going to go step by step for all the different what you call qualifications. You can ask questions for your specific what you call your specific scenario, and then we can then advise during that workshop how you can write you can complete the documents so that they meet the requirements of the Department of Employment and Labor. So next week, make time. I will share the link in the comments as soon as this is done. All right. And then number 3, you need to prepare for the exam. So preparing for the exam, it can cost you anywhere between 0 Rand and 10,000 Rand, depending on like what do you want. So if you've already have your engineering books, you can go to the Polycraft website, download past papers, and start sort of figuring it out yourself. If you want to save time, you can buy one of the Polycraft textbooks, which pretty much summarizes all the content, gives you all the different types of questions that can be asked, and it has the practice exams, and it just saves your time with studying, right? So that is about 920, and then all the way to the Polycraft programs. So our flagship program is 10,000 Rand. It's over 16 weeks. You can join that, but I'm not here to sell. I'm just giving you the options for preparation, right? So there's other institutions that you can consider for your exam preparation, and you can Google those and you will find them, right? Then you need to register to write the exams. So in the workshop that we are going to have next week, we're going to touch this part of registering to write for the exam. And then from there, once you've written the exam and you pass the exams, then you can ask for the issue of your certificate. So those are the 5 steps that you need to complete in order for you to have this GCC Factories. Right. So colleagues, our objective today was very simple. I wanted to give you the information that will help you decide whether you need to pursue the GCC Factories or not, right? And for you to make the right decision, you needed to understand the legal context of the GCC Factories, number 1. Number 2, the 5 factors that you need to consider in order for you to make this decision. And number 3, the 5 steps that you need to complete to obtain the GCC Factories, right? And the long and short of it, colleagues, GCC Factories is for mechanical or electrical engineering graduates, and there's 3 routes in there. So there's the bachelor's in mechanical electrical, there's national diploma / BTech / advanced diploma / BEng Tech. So all of you fall under route 2. Then there's route 3, and then in route 3, then there's the the national and diploma, plus having the relevant trade and the relevant experience, right? So when it comes to this, the qualification part of things, as I said, we do have a workshop next week where we're going to unpack that even further. There's no time for today to unpack that. So we're going to have a whole hour, 30 minutes, hour to an hour, 30 minutes, just talking about the qualification and more specifically the Route 2 and Route 3 applicants. All right. So if you've got questions about that, join the workshop next week. All right. So the 5 factors: qualification, experience, industry, job function, and your age, and the 5 steps I've already mentioned. Right. So with 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left, let me go to the comments to check if there's any questions. So you can start posting your questions wherever you are. Please post your questions and then we will look at them. So I'm just going to look at the comments and see if there was any question as I was speaking. If you are there live and you've got a question, please post it now. We've got how many minutes? 4 minutes. All right. All right. So thank you for confirming that the audio is fine. Thank you very much. Okay, so there's a question there. Metallurgical engineers, mining engineers, if you're not working in workplaces that need to comply with OHS Act, no, right? So if you're working in a mine and in that mine, it's the Mine Health and Safety Act, then you need to consider the GCC mines rather, right? Or consider the mine manager certificate or any other certification that is on the mining side, all right? But if you've got those qualifications and you work for a SASOL in maintenance and operation, there's still a chance because you can apply as other qualifications. Because if you're in the right industry and obtaining the right experience, then the qualification is something that you can sort out over time. So that one, you submit your application with labor, they evaluate, and they may say to you, okay, do a couple of modules to supplement your qualification, and then you can move forward from there. Right. So what if you're in healthcare? Okay. So as I said, if you look at healthcare, if healthcare you mean working in a hospital, right? So the hospital building in itself, they don't need to appoint a GMR 2.1 because the equipment there is exempt from an appointment of a GMR 2.1, right? But you still need to comply with GMR 3, GMR 4, and so forth. Like, for example, the safeguarding of those machinery, or what you call working on live equipment, and so forth. You still need to comply with that part. The only part that you don't need to consider if you are working for a building, so like a hospital, an office block, you don't need a 2.1 appointee there. You can just appoint, or the requirement is that you appoint what you call a contractor or a person who is experienced in the maintenance and operation of those machinery and understands the what you call the health and safety requirements, or how to operate those equipment in a health and safety way. So if you're in a hospital, there is no need. But if in healthcare you are talking about maybe on the production side, so you're working for one of the pharmaceuticals that is manufacturing pills, and there's a whole production line, then yes, you do need a legal appointment for that space. All right. So if your employer is, because I know, for example, Life Hospitals, they want to appoint their maintenance manager or their facilities managers as 2.1s. It's not required. They can do it, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing it, but it's not really a legal requirement. All right. So data centers. Again, it's a built environment. So if you're working in a data center, there's no need for a GMR 2.1 appointee. So log off and consider another career path. All right. So let's look at linked to data centers is the current trend, which is now the renewable energy. So the wind turbines, the solar plants, and so forth. So if you're working in that space, like the renewable space, there is discussions around that, in that you do need to appoint a 2.1, but there the context of appointing the 2.1 is on the maximum demand side of things, because now that facility is looked as the machinery is used for for the distribution of electricity. So since you're using the solar plant, you're using the wind turbines to produce electricity for distribution, then you need to appoint a GMR 2.1 for that facility. So in that facility, you will need a 2.1 appointee when the maximum demand is above 10 MVA or 10,000 kVA, right? So that's very massive, right? So anything less than that, you can appoint a competent person. The competent person doesn't have to have a GCC Factories, but they need to have mechanical or electrical engineering qualification, and they must have the what you call the minimum of 2 years experience in the maintenance and operation in the class of machinery they are meant to supervise. So we'll do another workshop talking about the different competency levels, and then you can then unpack which competency level you fall within, and you could possibly be appointed as a GMR 2.1 without a GCC Factories where you are working. Right. So all right, so how many times do they sit for evaluation, and when is the best time to apply? All right, so the evaluation, okay, so your application goes to the commission of okay, first there's the administrator who just looks at you've got all the documents. So if you've got all the documents, then it moves, and then it gets submitted to the commission of examiners, right? I don't know how often they sit at the commission of examiners, but I do know that to consider your application, it gets looked by the committee. All the application gets looked by the committee, and then the committee decides, and then after that they give it to the administrator who communicates the outcome to you, right? So you can apply at any time for this evaluation or for the application for the GCC Factories. The application that does close, it's the application to write the exams. So that application is with the exam centers. So with the exam centers, every year there's a what you call there's a what you call a management plan that is published. So if you're planning to write, for example, the June, or the people who are writing today's exam, obviously you're late. So if you're planning to write the November exam, the closing date for that is, I think, 25 September. So that's the closing date for the exam centers if you want to write in November of this year. But to just do the application with the Department of Labor, you can do it at any time. Instrumentation, it falls under other qualifications. So if you've done instrumentation, whether it's a bachelor's degree in controls or instrumentation, or it's a national diploma, or it's a national end diploma. So all of that instrumentation is like light current. So you can still apply, but you're going to be applying as other qualifications. So on the qualification side, you don't meet that requirement, but there's a workaround, because the labor will then look at additional modules that you need to add. And then once you add those modules, then you sort out the qualification part. But on the experience side, remember now there's the other factors. So on the experience and the industry side, then you just need to make sure that your experience, industry, and job function is within what you call is heavy current. So you need to be your job function. You need to be working on the heavy current side of things. So if you are working purely as an instrument technician or engineer, then from an experience, industry, job function, you're not going to meet the requirements, and there's a good chance that your application will be rejected. All right, so you need to be doing the work that is done by your heavy current counterparts. Right, so let's look at the difference between a 2.1 and 2.7. So what is the difference between a GMR 2.1 and a GMR 2.7? So the GMR 2.1 is the main legal appointee, and then the GMR 2.7 is the assistant to the 2.1. So the 2.7, how you appoint it is one of two ways, right? So it could be by choice. So the employer could decide that, you know what, the 2.1 is struggling and they need assistance, so they appoint a 2.7. Or it could be an instruction from the Department of Employment and Labor. So the inspector can come to your premises and they look at the risk, the incidents, and all of that, and they can make a decision for you to say you must appoint a 2.7, right? Now, the 2.7 also needs to be competent, right? So, what is then the competency of the 2.7? If the delegated authority of that 2.7 is for a section of the workplace where the sum of the power generated by machinery is above 3000 kVA, above 3000 kilowatts, then that person also needs to have a GCC Factories, or they must have a bachelor's in engineering, and they must have passed the GCC Factories OHS exam, right? So yeah, so the 2.7 also needs to be competent. So a workaround with that one is when you delegate the authority, you can delegate them to a facility that is less than the 3000 kilowatts, then they don't need to be a certificated engineer. So colleagues, let me just clarify something. You having your GCC Factories means that you have written written and passed the plant engineering and the OHS Act exam, and you have been given the certificate from the Department of Employment and Labor, and that certificate signed by the chief inspector. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say you've got your GCC Factories. So just passing the exams is not in, it doesn't end there. All right, so you still need to get your certificate. All right, so I hope that clarifies the 2.7 time and date. All right, so Monday, Tuesday, let me share the links quickly. So Monday, Tuesday, we've got the two sessions. So the one session is okay, there it is. All right, so the one session, let me just share the link to all the events, and then you'll pick the event from there. Okay, so let me just share that link. All right, so I've shared the link to the events. Okay, I can share the link on YouTube and on Facebook. I can't share the link on LinkedIn. We'll just do another post, and then you can pull out that link. All right. And what other questions are there? Bear with me, colleagues. We're just doing the questions. We are done with the live stream, but we're just looking at the questions and answering some of the questions that are in the comments. So I've covered the time and date for next week's workshops. Please, can you share? Okay, so there's the question again on how long does the department take to evaluate your application? Okay, I hope no one from labor is watching this. But it used to take anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, but right now I've seen it taking 8 weeks. I've seen it taking there's people who got responses after 6 months. But my rule of thumb is if after, let's say, 3 to 6 months, let's say 6 months, you don't get your response, just resubmit, because there is a chance that it might be lost somewhere, right? So, but at around 3 months, you need to just keep following up. At around 1 month to 2 months, you can just keep following up with labor to find out how far is your application. All right, so nated courses, if you didn't get 50% of the subjects. Right, so one of the other things with Route 3 and Route 2, so but for Route 2 it's easy because the Technicons already their pass mark is 50%. So for Route 2 and Route 3, if actually for all of them, the minimum pass mark for your modules that you need to, or grade that you need to have for your different subjects is 50%. So for university, the pass mark is already 50%, so there's no need to mention that. For Technicon, again, it's 50%, no need to mention that. But if your Technicon has a pass mark of 40%, then whatever module that you got less than 50%, you have to redo that module and get your pass mark back to 50%. So for the TVET, the national end diplomas, all your modules must be above 50%. When I say all, I mean all. So if you started from N1 all the way to N6, all your modules must be 50%. Okay. If you started on N4 to N6, all your modules must be 50%. Because if your entry into that the to N4 to N6 could be metric, or it could be N1 to N3, right? Whatever the case may be, all your modules need to be above 50%. If it's less than 50%, go speak to your TVET to rewrite that subject so that you can push up that mark back to the 50%. All right. All right. So we are out of time. So thank you for bearing with me. We're just going through the questions. So if you are still interested in the answers to the questions, please stay online. Let's go through these questions. All right, so I've shared the link for next week's workshops. So just go there, register, and you can take it from there. All right, so there's a question here. Right. So the question now there is, okay, so if you've got 3 trades, right? So the minute you say you've got 3 trades, and then I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God. Okay, topic for another day, right? Let's talk offline and let me help you with your career counseling. Okay, so if for some whatever reason you've got 3 trades, then when you're like, for example, in this example, you've got electrical, instrumentation, and mechanical, right? So you will decide when, because you remember in the application you can apply as mechanical or electrical, right? If you look at your industry, your experience, and your job role, that is mostly mechanical, then apply as mechanical. If it's mostly the industry, job role, or job function, and experience is mostly electrical, then apply as electrical, right? Because the reason for that is you don't want experience to be the what you call the factor that is sort of getting your application to be rejected, right? So apply according to the experience that is what you call that will make it easier for you to be accepted. Then you can then look at then the qualification. So on the qualification, then you will have to then do the what you call the minimum subjects based on that. So if you're mechanical, there's the minimum subjects. If you're electrical, there's the minimum subjects, and we're going to talk about that in next week's workshop. All right, cool. So I hope that answers your question. All right, so there's the question there. 3 years experience in mining industries, graduate, currently working in factories as an artisan assistant. Any advice? Okay, so so now you've got a diploma in electrical engineering, and now you've moved into the factories. My advice is cover the 3 things: check, engineering, management. So make sure that whatever job function that you are doing, it's contributing to those 3 main things, right? Check being safety, health, environment, and quality. Engineering, I've covered it, so you can rewind and what have you, but I've covered what engineering is all about. I've covered what management is all about. So yes, if you're working as a artisan assistant, then in that context, you can still do quality control plans, right? You can still be part of incident investigations from a safety and engineering point of view, right? You can update or what you call update data sheets. You can write technical specifications. So all of those different functions that are required, you can still do them, right? So one of the things that I always say is, don't ask permission, just apologize, right? So if you are going to be in that workspace and you are going to be like keep asking permission, can I do the RCA for this incident? They're gonna say no. You're an artisan assistant, focus on that, right? So sometimes you just need to go there, do the RCA, provide your recommendations. Maybe they are right, maybe they're wrong. whatever the case may be. But whoever is in charge will say, oh, okay, thank you for your consideration, but know that this is not your job function. But the bottom line is you got exposure to it, you got that experience that you can put in your CV and in your application. So yeah, so that's my advice, man. Like go there, get the right type of experience, and if you get the right type of experience, you'll be fine. Okay. And then currently studying UNISA N6. If I complete my advanced diploma, can I still qualify? I have a trade as well. So yeah, so if you are a Route 3, so which is national end diploma, then you end up getting your national diploma. Then you are now applying as a route 2. And then if you're applying as a Route 2, there is no requirement that you must have a trade, right? So because you're applying as a Route 2 applicant, which just needs that national diploma, and that national diploma needs to have the plant engineering modules, of which we're going to talk about next week. Right. 3 months. Okay, I'm just looking at the questions. Okay. Yeah. So the question about how long does it take labor to respond? As I said, it used to be 4 to 8 weeks, but it's now becoming a bit longer. I know labor is dealing with a backlog, but that is out of our control. So if you don't get your acceptance letter to meet the deadline to register at the exam centers for November, then you have to wait for next year. Relaxed. Time keeps its own time. You will get this thing eventually. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. There is still time. All right. What institution can one enroll? Okay, Carlo. So the question there: what institution can one enroll in for GMR 2.7 or 2.1? So your question already is a wrong question. So you need to start this session from scratch, all right? Because when we started this session, we spoke about the context of the GCC factories and what does GMR 2.1 mean and where does it come from, and what 2.7 is. We explained it from the comments that came through. So if you're asking which institution where you can do a GMR 2.1, then you have failed today's class. You have to start again and and reevaluate you, right? So start again. I think there will be this will be available on YouTube, where you can rewind and go back and forth. Please start again from the context and listen to that context properly. Now, if your question was to say, look, there is an opportunity to be appointed as a GMR 2.1, and you would like a course that will sort of share more insights on how to fulfill this role. On the link that I've shared on our upcoming events, we will have another role of the GMR 2.1 course in July. We're just finalizing the dates. So if that's your question, then on the events list, a link that I've shared, you will see, once we finalize the dates, you will see the role of the GMR 2.1 course, where we unpack the SHEC, the engineering, and the management, so that when you get appointed as a 2.1, you know exactly what you need to do from day one and up to the first 100 days as a GMR 2.1 and beyond that. So yeah, so that will share a link and more information as we go. All right, so how long does it take for labor to issue the letter? We've answered that one. The HVAC generators, VSD on data centers. Okay, so I've answered that one as well. So anything in the building works, data centers, hospitals, office blocks, there is no requirement. It's not a legal requirement to appoint the GMR 2.1, because those machinery and those type of workplaces are exempt from GMR 2.1, right? So even malls as well, there's no need to appoint a 2.1. You just need to appoint a competent person who will look after the maintenance and operation, and that person needs to understand the safe working of those machinery, and obviously they must provide safeguarding. They must provide the all the other requirements, like working on live equipment and so forth. All right. So yeah. So I think that is answered. GCC. Okay, so GCC is like the Comrades Marathon for mech and electrical engineers. You got to do the GCC just for vibes. Don't log off, guys. Hey, don't let this person fool you. Hey, even if you are mechanical or electrical, if you are not in the right industry, log off. But I'm joking, guys. There's still a possibility. I've given you the guidelines on exactly how you can reposition your career for the GCC factories. All right. So jokes aside, it's still possible. I just wanted to make a point today that you shouldn't be pursuing this thing just for vibes. Just look. You also need to look at your where you are in your career and where you're trying to go with your career. And once you define your career path, then it will be easier for you to determine whether the GCC factories is the right certification for you. There's other options out there, colleagues. So this is not the only option in terms of advancing your career. All right, so let's look at. I think we are done with questions. I think it's just comments now. Since N3 is okay, so the last famous question, the phasing out of N1 to N3. All right, so colleagues, there is no worries there. All right, so okay, just for a background for people who don't know, the N1 to N3 is being phased out by the Department of Higher Education and the Department of Basic Education, right? So phasing out meaning that any of the modules that were N1 to N3 will no longer be available for you to do. But remember that them removing that or phasing out N1 to N3 doesn't mean that there's going to be a void. So that is going to be replaced by the QCTO skills programs, and there's still going to be from the basic education the NCV courses as well, right? So there's no need to panic, right? So that's the first point. The second point, the only N3 module that is required for GCC factories was the engineering drawings. And the thing that I've always said about engineering drawings is that the minimum required is entry engineering drawings. So if, for example, you go do what you call like a skills program, an accredited skills program in technical drawings or AutoCAD or whatever, that may be accepted because those skills programs, you find that the NQF level for those is like NQF 4 or some of them NQF 3, right? N3 engineering drawings, I think, is NQF 3 or NQF 2, right? So it's that or equivalent. So if you've done that, attach your qualification and your engineering drawing qualification or skills program certificate and submit that to the department, and it may be accepted, right? So it's not the end of the world. Don't sit there and say, no, the N1 to N3 is being phased out, I cannot do this thing anymore. But it's not like that, colleagues. You can still do it. There's still other options around that. So if you look at N4 to N6, if a prerequisite module was an N3 or an N1 to N3 module, there is a workaround with that one. You just need to speak with your TVET colleges. But as far as I know, the NT level 2, a majority of the N4 modules is just maths literacy and English. Okay, so if you've got those two, then there's no the sky is not falling, so it's not the end of the world, right? So that them phasing N1 to N3 is not the end of the world. You can still sort it out. So the other next challenge is if remember I said N1 to N6, all your modules must be above 50%. So if you've got N1 to N3 modules that are less than 50%, then you're gonna have to do redo those modules on an equivalent skills program or another equivalent NCV module or whatever the case may be. So it's not the end of the world. So just make sure that you complete all those modules above 50% before the what you call the deadlines. But I think it's already closed. I don't know, but just make sure that you complete that before the deadlines. All right, and I think that's about it. There's questions that came through after. Your trade and mechanical. So if you've got 3 qualifications, right? Your trade in mechanical N4, N6 diploma, and diploma N6, currently completing national diploma. Okay, I've answered that question. All right. So if you are a route 1, which is a national N diploma, but you are doing the national diploma, which is now a route 2, just complete that route 2. Then once you complete route 2, then you don't need to have a trade or anything below that route 2. I understand. So because you're gonna apply as a route 2, right? So that's the long and short of that answer. So if you are doing route 1, like your degree, then you don't have to worry about everything else that is below that. All right. Just joined. I knew it. Carlo, I knew that Carlo just joined. I saw from the question that no, this one he just joined. But yeah, please, man, at the end of this, just rewind. And yeah, a lot of the question that you've asked is actually answered earlier on when we started. All right. All right. I think that's about it. Thank you once again. If you want to be a student through Polycraft, what is the process? Okay, so our website www.polycraft-gccstudy.com. So we've got different programs, we've got different courses. So if you want to enroll, you want to support us or whatever, go to our website, find what is right for you, and then you take it from there. Right. So with that said, thank you everybody for joining this live stream. I really, really appreciate for the time that you've taken for your professional development. So we're gonna try to have these live streams once a month. Then we're gonna have the close. Gonna try to have more of these close workshops. So next week we're going to have the qualification evaluation workshop. So if you want help in looking at your qualification and to see if your qualification meets the requirements, so we're going to have a group workshop, limited spaces available. So please book on the link that I've provided in the comments. If you want help with completing the application documents for the GCC factories, we're gonna also have a closed workshop, limited spaces available. Please, if you're gonna RSVP colleagues, make sure that you are going to be able to attend. There's limited spaces available. So if you block a space for somebody else, then it's just gonna be unfair. So if you know that you're not gonna attend, please do not RSVP because you're gonna block other people who may benefit and who will definitely attend. So the workshops next week are not gonna be a live stream, but there will be a live webinar. So we're gonna do them, I think, via Zoom or Teams, a Teams webinar, one of the two. But yeah, if you go to the link that I've provided, you can RSVP, and then we will share the meeting links for next week, Monday, and next week, Tuesday. All right. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. So remember, you can find out more information on www.polycraft-gccstudy.com. Our email address is info@palucraft.com. So if you've got any question, please drop us an email, visit our website, and you will get everything that you need that is GCC Factories related. With that said, enjoy your day, and I will see you in our next session.